Hello, my name is Suzanne Price, and I'd like to welcome you back to this episode of Powering Down the Fear Machine. Today, I'm actually wanting to pick up on something that I mentioned in the last video when I said that in order for us to be able to quell our fears, to be able to overcome the fear, or to be able to really manage the fears and stresses in our lives, that we need to be able to really identify what the fear is, what the core of the fear is, and where it came from. I know it sounds a little ridiculous to say that because we often think that it's so obvious. And since we are really focusing on the fear that's come about on the planet since the rollout of the pandemic event, most people will probably be thinking that they're either afraid of being sick, they're afraid of the lockdowns, they're afraid of the future. There's so many things that have happened, and I am going to be explaining a lot of this as we go through the different videos. But the fact of the matter is that it isn't always really clear where the fear is coming from. First of all, we need to know, is that fear real? And as crazy as that sounds, it's actually a very, very important question, because a lot of people may actually be afraid, but then there's a lot of people who are acting in a way that they think they should act because they think they should be afraid because of what they're hearing and seeing, but they may not actually have any fear at all. I say that because fear is actually a survival mechanism. And as I was saying in the last video, is that when that survival mechanism is triggered, it sets off the fight or flight response. There's a lot of feelings and sensations that are associated with that. But it doesn't always have to be that intense. In fact, if you think about times when you have had intuitive thoughts and feelings, that is when fear is being detected in your mind-body system. And the thing that I really, really want to point out here is I want for you to become aware of whether the fear is something that you are thinking. Is it in your head, in your mind, or are you picking it up in the body? The reason I say this is because our brains, our analytical minds, are actually quite gullible. In fact, the brain doesn't know the difference between what is real or what is imagined or what is true or what is false. Just think about if you've ever seen a scary movie and something happened and you jumped, or got startled all of a sudden and you jumped out of your skin. Or there's been movies that have created terror and phobias in people's lives. For instance, back years ago, I think it was probably in the 70s or 80s, there was a movie, I think it was called The Exorcist, and people were saying that they were so afraid, or the news reports were, that people were so afraid that they were having to keep churches open close by to the movie theaters so that people were coming straight out of the movie and they were going to the church. That was the story. The movie Jaws created such fear in so many people's lives that there are people who have never gone in the ocean since, they have never gone in a pool since, and I have heard and actually know of people who became so afraid of water, they won't even go in the shower or out in the rain. And these are not people I know personally in my life, but people that I have met or know of. It's a very, very real thing. My point is that, was that a real fear? Because, the person was only sitting in a movie theater or watching it on TV. Or was this something that the brain took and distorted and blew the whole thing out of distortion and made it out to be something terrible? I also mentioned in the last video, I mentioned states. And I said a state is a mind-body experience that incorporates your thoughts, your feelings, what your eyes are seeing, or the position of your eyes at the time, your breathing patterns, your body temperature. It just takes everything into consideration. And what can often happen when in a state of actual fear, or let's say there's been somebody who's had an accident and they get hurt, things get locked into place in that state. Like everything gets locked together and melded together. So it is really super, super important that we do learn to identify the fears. Also, too, because we are talking about things that have happened since the rollout of the pandemic event. So first of all, what did they tell people? They said that there was a virus that had no symptoms. So you have to wonder why so many people insisted that they wanted to go and get a checkup or a test to see if they had it. What has happened in that people no longer trust their body, trust their intuition, trust their intelligence? I mean, seriously, the thing that's even, or as much, if not more ridiculous than that, even if you went for a test right now and you didn't have it and you came out and you walked past somebody that did have the said virus, which was originally called corona, and then it got changed to COVID, and then it was the sleep virus Delta, as in Delta sleep, and now it's something else, which a lot of people are doing research and finding out that this was based on a movie and all different types of things. So my point is, people are often, because of fear, they don't think straight. They don't think for themselves. They do not pay attention to the mind-body system. They do not pay attention to their intuition, or they only pay attention to what's in their mind. The problem with that is that, as I was saying, the brain doesn't know the difference between what is real and what is imagined, what is true or what is false. So in a way, it's gullible and so very susceptible to believing anything that it's told. This is the problem when we do not pay attention to our mind-body system, to our intuition, to our heart. Because it is your mind-body system, your intuition, and your heart that is actually going to tell you the truth. It's what picks up the signals, the warning signs that you feel when you are really in fear. So then what happens is people react to what they think they're supposed to be afraid of. And when you think about the amount of influence the media has, and let's face it, most people are getting their updates and getting all their information from one form of the media or the other. And you might as well know now, it's pretty much all owned by the same people. It's called the media industrial complex. So what happens is people will see something on one channel and then another channel. So they think, oh, well, it must be true. And then it's in a magazine, and then it's in a newspaper, and then it's in social media. And a lot of people think that is all validation. Whereas if you do a little bit of research, you will realize that it's all coming from the same place. So then what's happening is people are reacting based on what they are being told. So I'm going to tell you about something that I found quite fascinating, amazing, and actually quite terrifying. If you think back to the beginning of when the pandemic event was rolled out, the first thing that happened, there was predictive programming. I think I've mentioned that already. So they start to drop the little breadcrumbs of something that's happening somewhere else, and it's probably going to come here, gets you all prepared so that, when it's rolled out, you're not going to dispute it. You're just going to think, oh, well, we knew it was going to come, and now you're going to behave yourself and you're going to comply with whatever you were told to do. So what happened then was we saw all these news reports coming out, and we were basically told that we were kind of going to go into what they were calling sort of like wartime measures. I will be talking more about that later. And so they also, what they were wanting us to do, now I'm going to tell you there's a good faction to this, and then there's a bad side to this as well. There's basically been two competing agendas, or there's been a plan and an agenda, and that's why everything is taking so long, and that's why everything is so confusing. So it was we definitely needed to prepare ourselves for the lockdowns. They knew that the lockdowns were gonna, this has been in the process, this has been in the works for years. This is not something that just happened in 2020. So they needed to make sure everybody had enough food and supplies and everything. So how did that roll out? They didn't come on and warn us. They didn't come on and say, okay, we're going to be locking down the whole world. And we need you to all go out and make sure you have enough food and toilet paper and everything else. No, they didn't do that. They just outsmarted everybody because they knew how influential people, how easily influenced people can be. And so what they did was they started airing stories on the media, on the news, about a toilet paper shortage. I live in Vancouver. My mother had gone on holidays to Britain, and my friend had gone on holidays to Australia, and then she'd gone to the Philippines. So we were keeping in touch because before they went, there was already, the predictive programming was already happening. There was already talk about this virus, and it was in China, and then it was starting to, get to this places, and they were talking about lockdowns and, shutting down all the travel and everything else. I know what was going on there, and I will be doing other videos about that later. It's very, very enlightening, and it'll really help you sort of deal with what's going on. So then what happened was they started to put out these stories about Costco being sold out of toilet paper. I believe that the first time I saw the story, I believe it was about Costco in Australia. Now, first of all, let me ask you this. Really, do you think that there's not enough news or stuff going on in the world that the media actually needs to air such a stupid and redundant story as Costco being sold out of toilet paper? Do you think that's newsworthy? I personally don't. Furthermore, the reason I told you that my mum and my friend had gone away is because when I was talking with them on the phone or online, I was, we were saying, oh, anything going on? You seeing any other updates or anything? And both of them said, no, nothing here. Everything's business as usual. Nobody's really concerned. Nobody's doing anything. The only thing is, you can't get any toilet paper here for some strange reason. So what it was not only did the media air this stupid story about toilet paper, it turns out that it was brilliant, but let's just go with the first one, about Costco being sold out of toilet paper. Not only were they airing this as news, seriously, news, but they were airing it worldwide. So why in the world do you think that they did that? They did it because they knew exactly the amount of influence they have over people. The media has so much power over what we see and what we hear. And what happens is because they have that impact on us, they also know that they are in complete control over how we feel. Because again, remember, we are mind body entities. So we've got this story, it's about scarcity, and people, it's there's a shortage, scarcity, and then they're showing all these horrific stories after. So even the ones like myself that thought I'm not falling for this garbage, I ended up having to go out and buy some stupid toilet paper because everybody was stripping the shelves clean. They knew that. They knew that they could pull this off. So in other words, the media has the control not only to show us what they want us to see and hear. They're in the business of perception management. Okay, so that's the perception. The perception is that there's a shortage, but then that also impacts how we feel, and more importantly, that impacts how we behave. So what did we do? All around the world, we had millions of people turning a story into a self-fulfilling prophecy. I just want to point that out because this is massive. And in case you hadn't noticed, unless of course you're like me and you don't watch the media, I haven't watched it for years, only once in a while to see what garbage they're putting out now and to terrify people because they're spewing out fear porn left, right, and center. The reason I want you to be aware of this is because I want you to think about a lot of the fears that you've picked up over the last year or so, 2 years, actually, it's going on 2 years. And I want you to really think about, were they warranted? Were they really fears, or were you reacting to something that you were being shown on the TV or told on the TV? I'm pointing this out not only because of what is being put out and all the statistics, the scary statistics, the fake news stories, and I can tell you about 1,000,000 of those things. But it's not just about what's happened since the pandemic event has been rolled out, but it's something that's happened. It's gone on for years. It's gone on for years. And we typically don't even think about it. We typically don't even stop to wonder whether or not what we're being told or shown is true. And the scary thing about that is it wouldn't matter so much if it wasn't impacting how we feel and then impacting our behavior. So a lot of the feelings, a lot of the fears that have come about since the beginning of the pandemic event are completely unwarranted. Although what is really, really scary is the fact that we, the people, as a collective population of different countries and the planet, we have taken those stories and run with them. And I'm going to be talking a lot about different little examples of this as we go through, but I just really wanted you to think about, are you really afraid? Do you think you're supposed to be afraid? What exactly are you afraid of? I'm going to do another video about this as well. Because again, like I say, some people are afraid of getting sick. Some people are afraid of the loneliness. Some people are afraid of the separation between people. Again, this is massive, right? The divide between people, it's happening in all areas of our lives, and that's creating a lot of problems for people. A lot of fear, a lot of loneliness, a lot of depression, a lot of fear for the future, the jobs and everything else. I will be talking about all these different things, and I will be dispelling a lot of the fears as we go through. The fact of the matter is, it doesn't matter whether you believe that there's a virus or not, or whether you believe that the virus is dangerous or not. The fact of the matter is, none of this could have been pulled off if it wasn't for the fact that so many people were so willing to go along with the stories that were coming out from the media. Now, I also want to say, I've also mentioned as well how fears then they kind of end up getting transferred onto different people and onto different things, and then they get all mangled up and tangled up together, and they're really, really, really difficult to separate and pry apart. They're difficult to even identify them. And so this is a very, very big issue, and it's something that I will be doing quite a lot of videos about, and we will be working on this a little piece at a time. But just please start to really think about that, and to try and think about times when you have actually been afraid, as in you have felt afraid and you've known that there was something to be fearful of, Think about times when you had a gut feeling about something, whether you paid attention to it or not. I always pay attention to my gut, my heart, my intuition. To me, it's like it's a lifesaver. It is a lifesaver. It's part of your survival mechanism. And think about what fears you have either bought into and become afraid of, or that you have acted on and you might not even be afraid of at all, because I've seen that no end as well. And the reason I'm bringing this up now, because as we start to dismantle this and we start to break it apart, then we start to realize maybe there's not as much fear as what we have been led to believe that there is. And that's a really good place to start. So I'm going to leave you with that for now. And I hope that you are enjoying your Christmas holidays or your time off. It's actually Boxing Day and it snowed here in Vancouver, so you could probably hear the snow shovels outside. So it is beautiful. So try and get outside and maybe try and take some pictures of, watch out for the clouds and the skies, and beautiful, listen to the birds and just really enjoy the fresh air and just being out in nature and really getting back into your body instead of just being in your head. One of the biggest challenges we as a race are dealing with right now is because we have become so disconnected from our hearts. And I'm not talking about falling in love or whatever. I'm talking about, this is our guide. This is our protection. This is our intuition. It is our survival mechanism. It is through our heart that we are connected to each other and connected to the universe, because we have become so distracted and so accustomed to living in our heads. We have become disconnected from our hearts and we have become trapped in our minds, and it's our minds that's running amok here. So we need to reconnect with that as well, and we will definitely do some videos about that as well very soon. Anyway, take care for now, and I will see you in another video. Bye bye.